Let's go. Hello and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the most important tech news and tech stories in Asia. Today's Thursday, the 4th of June, 2026. Let's get right to it. We are going to talk about, is Vietnam the next super app battleground? That's going to be our big story for today. We've got another great show with another group of great guests. Initially, Gary Eng, CEO at viAct, will join us to talk about how AI-powered visual intelligence will help industrial and construction businesses prevent frontline risk before it becomes operational failure. Following that, we will welcome Felix Liao, APAC Product Management Director at Denodo, to discuss how data virtualization platforms help enterprises turn fragmented, governed data into AI-ready business capability. Next, we will talk to Matthew Smith, CEO at MyPass Global, to cover how verified workforce data will help regulated industries operate safer, faster, and more intelligently. And then Alon Kaufman, CEO and co-founder at Duality Technologies, will talk about how privacy-preserving artificial intelligence will help businesses unlock sensitive data collaboration without exposing the underlying data. I can't wait to talk to him about that. Later in the program, we will be joined by Darren Wang, CEO at OwlTing Group, to explore how stablecoin-based payment infrastructure will help enterprises move money faster, more efficiently, aggregate payment volume, and settle across borders with greater transparency and control. And finally, Nanda Ivens, CMO and co-founder at MWX AI, will join us to talk about how an accessible AI marketplace, this should also be pretty interesting as well, helps SMEs automate work, expand capacity, and compete with larger businesses. And before we get to all of our amazing guests and some news, let's hear from our presenting sponsor, Twilio. Twilio is the secure and scalable platform to build amazing customer engagement without the complexity, with the AI-driven workflows you need to connect. They are trusted by over 300,000 businesses. It is the platform that makes more possible. Visit twilio.com to start building today. Okay, let's get to some news. So, just based on a whole bunch of stuff that I've been reading recently, Vietnam is emerging as Southeast Asia's new test bed, for platform businesses, where companies are not only expanding existing operations, but also experimenting with new business lines across mobility automation, fintech, logistics infrastructure, AI-enabled services, and broader digital economy partnerships. And I want to just dig into this a little bit deeper if people don't mind. If you have been following the startup ecosystem, or just sort of the tech-enabled ecosystem in Southeast Asia for the past 10 or 15 years, there was a lot of talk about Indonesia, 270, 280 million people, fast-growing economy, just a great place to test stuff. But what ended up happening, and Indonesia is a great country, right? And they've built some great companies. So the GoTo, right? So Gojek and Tokopedia, two big companies that merged, came out of Indonesia. A bunch of great venture capitalists are there as well. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's large. And it's 18,000 islands. So testing something in Jakarta is not like testing something in Bali. It's just very different. And I think what's happened here is Vietnam is almost like the Goldilocks country to test things. Again, a highly technically educated population, a very young population, but also 100 and something million people, so small enough that it makes sense that you can test things there, but large enough that you can actually understand what the real impact is going to be. And I think that is actually really, really interesting. It's not, and it's contiguous, which means it's not like 18,000 islands. It's not like the Philippines, 13,000, however many islands that is as well. It's one contiguous country. And the government there is actually really interested in building its tech ecosystem. Now, the most recent thing that's happened in Vietnam is Grab, so one of the biggest and most prominent sort of technology organized companies in Southeast Asia, their statement that it plans to explore pilot programs for autonomous vehicles and delivery robots in Vietnam, alongside a broader long-term investment commitment covering digital transformation, sustainable growth, smart mobility, electric vehicles, and multimodal transport integration, which means they're not just going to use their own vehicles or their Grab-associated vehicles. They may also move into public transportation. We'll get to that as well. Grab also proposed a nationwide network of 6,000 shared EV charging points by 2027. And as I just mentioned, They're working on an app-based public transport connectivity, which is super important. Here's the other thing that I want to mention about Southeast Asia in general, and Vietnam specifically, that's very different than the West. Since most of the economies in Southeast Asia are still emerging, what ends up happening is you can test things here, and particularly in Vietnam, which is in even earlier stages maybe than countries like Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. You can test things there without stepping on the toes of incumbents. So it means that if you need government approval, you can find a place to be able to do this without taking stuff away. And I think this is one of the best things about operating in Southeast Asia in particular, and that is the pie is growing. So individual companies, whether it's Grab, which is already large, right, goes to a country like Vietnam, and instead of taking the pie pieces away from existing companies in Vietnam, they're saying we're going to make the pie bigger for everybody. And some ancillary services that we may not be able to provide, we're going to help you provide them, and we're going to help you connect to our network to have better opportunities. So the other thing that happened here as well is a company, I always want to call it Garena because I feel like it's a much more differentiated name, but they changed the name a few years ago. I say this all the time. It drives everybody crazy, is SEA. Their statement that it wants to expand in Vietnam beyond Shopee, which is their e-commerce company base. They want to expand from that into banking, financial services, and modern logistics. And it makes sense, right? If you look at what they're doing, they're an e-commerce company. They're going to need to have payments. If there's a banking license that's available, they're going to try to get it because they want to not control, but they want to have access to your money so you can then pay them in a way that's easier for them and also easier for you. And frankly, if they have access to your money, maybe they should be able to provide you some simple, at least at first, financial services and probably be involved in the financial literacy that's taking place at scale in Vietnam as well, which is going to end up being really important. And the logistics thing, I don't think I have to explain it. If there are logistics and there are logistics companies in Vietnam, if you want to modernize them or again, help them be better, connecting them to a premier e-commerce company is always going to have upside. So Vietnam's leadership also encouraged C to deepen their cooperation in e-commerce, in SME digitalization, digital sales channels, and digital supply chain integration. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just that these companies want to go into Vietnam, it's that Vietnam wants them to come into these countries. And that's actually really important. That pathway is open to them. And it just makes it easier to expand. Getting back to the thing that I was talking about earlier, this idea that it's an expanding pie. And the more people you have come into the country, particularly people from this region that understand this region, the bigger that pie is going to be. And in particular, if they can help with SME digitalization, I always like to say this, but if you look at every economy in Southeast Asia, and frankly, most economies in the world, 90% or more of the financial activity in these countries is from SMEs and SMBs. So digitalizing or digitizing them or helping them go through digital transformation in a real way, not just like turning forms into PDFs, but really digitally transforming these companies is always going to be super helpful. The underlying point here for me is that Vietnam is not just a consumer internet market anymore. It's not just a place where people can go to sell things cheaply and do volume. It is being treated, you see it by Grab and by SEA, and frankly, with encouragement from the government, as a platform infrastructure market. This is a really big deal. They want ride hailing to be prevalent there. They want logistics to work. They want e-commerce and payments, all the things that you would think of as from a modern digital economy perspective. The country itself wants it, the population wants it, and the government wants it there as well. And even smart city stuff is starting to converge with everything else that's going on in the country. Think about it. If you're running a logistics business in Ho Chi Minh or in Hanoi or in Hue, any of the big cities that are in Vietnam, if you have a smart city that has digitally sort of stuff all over the city, then doing logistics is going to be way better. We haven't even spoken about artificial intelligence, which I don't know how we've come this far without doing that yet, but that's also going to be important as well. And as I said, this fits Vietnam's broader macro and policy context. Just for some statistics, okay, before we get into some more detail here. Vietnam's digital economy is expected to reach roughly $45 billion and possibly $90 to $200 billion by 2030. While its digital economy growth has outpaced other ASEAN members in recent years, according to US government and Bain-cited estimates. Here's the other thing. Vietnam is also targeting aggressive economic growth in general, not just in these spaces that we just mentioned. The government, I mean, you should sit down for these numbers, actually. The government is aiming for at least 10% GDP growth in 2026. 10%. That's insane. While acknowledging that future development needs to depend more on technology, innovation, and digital transformation rather than just sort of factories filled with cheap labor. And again, this gets back to something that I was saying earlier. Because these are emerging economies and because they have access to information from all over the world in a way that wasn't possible 50 years ago, right, when Japan was industrializing, the point is that they can see how other countries have gone through this. Frankly, they can look at their neighbors and see what Thailand has done. They can see what Malaysia's done. They can see what Japan has done. They can look further across the oceans and see what the United States has done. I haven't mentioned Europe because I'm not sure actually what's going on in Europe. Did you hear that, Martin? Anyway, the Grab announcement is not isolated. Grab itself has already made strategic moves around autonomous mobility in Southeast Asia, including partnerships or investments involving WeRide and Momenta. These are companies in the region, right? Both aimed at bringing robotaxis, autonomous shuttles, or autonomous driving technologies into Grab's regional network. Again, here's one of the big platform companies saying, how can we connect to businesses that aren't necessarily ones that we own outright and help them grow and have them learn from some of the stuff that we've done? Here's a fun fact that maybe you might not know about Grab. A few years ago, they made a decision to stop paying Google in Southeast Asia for their maps data. So if you're using Grab, that data, whether it's Grab for food, Grab for delivery, or Grab for their cars and their driving stuff, those maps are all theirs. At least most of them are. And part of the reason why they wanted to do this was because they weren't getting the level of accuracy that they needed or the level of consistency that they needed from Google Maps. And they said, never mind, we'll do it ourselves. But now they can then use those maps that they've developed themselves to share with some of the other companies, like I just mentioned, whether that's WeRide or Momenta, and allow those guys actually to stop paying Google. Sure, they'll have to pay Grab for their map data, but that data will be way better. There were plenty of times in Southeast Asia where we looked at data on a Google map, and it was simply wrong. I think Grab's actually been quite good at this. Seas, so the old Garena's Vietnam push, also fits its broader competitive pressure. Sea, with Shopee and its other businesses, have been spending heavily to defend itself against its rivals, investing in logistics, fulfillment speed, financial services, and, as I mentioned, AI-powered search, recommendations, and advertising. Okay, let's dig a little bit deeper. Why is Vietnam becoming a priority market for regional super apps and platform companies? Let's get some more data here. So Vietnam combines high digital growth, large consumer adoption potential, and strong state interest in digital transformation. This is the way I wanted to summarize, right? Those three components are actually really important. Vietnam's leadership is actively inviting platform investment into e-commerce, logistics, digital supply chains, and AI infrastructure. We haven't even started talking about whether there are going to be data centers there, whether Google's going to invest and Microsoft is going to invest there the same way they did in Thailand and the same way they did in Japan, and frankly, the same way they did in Korea. They haven't announced this yet. I don't know that yet, but it would make perfect sense to me, right? If you need land, a place to put a data center that's going to be AI enabled, and you need a very, very technologically educated population that's young, Vietnam is a great place to do this. Okay. And the country's growth strategy as a country is shifting, as I mentioned earlier, from labor cost advantage toward technology. And this used to take much longer. So again, for people that don't know, in the late 1960s and 1970s, Japan was the low-cost producer for almost all things in the world in the same way that China is. And their transition into a high-value economy and a technologized economy took like 25 or 30 years. That's actually interesting. And Vietnam is saying, we're going to wait 25 or 30 years. We understand that we had this sort of low labor cost economy. We were making things, a lot of factory work actually left Thailand and went to Vietnam. But again, this is based on my friends that actually own SMEs and SMBs in Thailand. But that's not a sustainable business model. And Vietnam is front running themselves and saying, we want to have an innovative, digitally transformative, technology-based economy, which makes foreign platform investment politically useful as well as commercially attractive. That ends up being super important. So what does Grab's autonomous vehicle and delivery robot interest actually signal? I think this is actually kind of cool because it signals that Grab is testing how physical AI, we've done many segments on how Grab is investing in robotics, artificial intelligence, and investing heavily in this stuff as well. Maybe some of the biggest investments in Southeast Asia from a platform business perspective. But how physical AI can enter Southeast Asia's urban mobility and delivery markets through existing demand. Maps, as I mentioned before, very big idea, very big business for Grab. Excuse me. And delivery markets through existing demand, maps, driver networks, merchant networks, and payment rails. Grab already has a big finance business. They already have a Grab wallet. They want to implement all this stuff in Vietnam. And Vietnam's statement themselves as a country includes autonomous vehicles. They can see the future. They want to have delivery robots there. But they also want to have EV charging, multimodal transport, public transport connectivity, which is really important. And again, if you think about an emerging market economy, building public transportation, if you're outside the region, for people that are in the region that have been to Singapore, you know that the Singapore underground is amazing. You know that it's expanded a lot in the last 25 to 30 years. But you also, if you're just walking around the street, you can see the most modern electric buses. Vietnam has a chance to catch up and potentially even leapfrog all of this stuff, right? That's what this multimodal transport means. And this is what the green mobility means as well. So the strategy here is more than just the robots. Okay, Grab's WeRide partnership is aimed at integrating level 4 robo-taxis, which is awesome, and autonomous shuttles into Grab's network. As I mentioned earlier, right now it's Grab Ride, Grab Taxi, all this sort of ride-hailing stuff that you know and love. But imagine being able to have, excuse me, imagine being able to have autonomous driving as part of this, remote monitoring, customer support. Grab's Momenta partnership points to a second path, factory-installed autonomous capability through mass-produced vehicles, which could reduce the cost and complexity of deploying autonomous mobility in Southeast Asia. Let's talk a little bit about C's Vietnam expansion into banking, financial services, and logistics. C appears to be treating Vietnam as a market where e-commerce, logistics, and financial services can reinforce one another. And I think that's actually really important. Shopee gives C consumer and merchant reach. Logistics improves delivery speed and reliability. And financial services can support payments, credit wallets, merchant finance, or just broader digital banking ambitions. And like I said earlier, once you have a wallet and once you have access to people's money or people give you access to their money, the next logical step, obviously, is to say, you've deposited money with us. Instead of just putting that money there and almost like saving at 0% interest, let's put that money to work for you. When you want to spend it, you can spend it. But when it's sitting there, you can actually earn some return on it. Vietnam's senior leadership has explicitly encouraged C to support SMEs with digital sales channels and digital supply chain integration. Again, as an e-commerce provider, they know how to do this. They've done this in other countries in the region, and frankly, they've done this in other countries outside the region as well. If my memory serves me correctly, Shopee has also expanded to Brazil. They know how to take SMEs and SMBs, put them on a platform, do digital transformation for them, and bring them in to the digital economy. C's wider regional strategy is already under pressure from competition and cost inflation. Again, we've done many segments on this too. The big competition between Shopee, Lazada, Alibaba, and other e-commerce providers, it's real. Reuters has reported that C has been investing in logistics, fulfillment, financial services, and AI to defend and improve Shopee's position. Now, the last thing is, how does Vietnam fit into the broader Southeast Asian AI and infrastructure story? So Vietnam is becoming a serious AI and digital infrastructure node, not only a consumer market story. And again, this makes sense, right? Like I said, the technology, education, the tech-related education in Vietnam is superior. There's so many sort of technology and development outsourcing companies in Vietnam. A lot of the sort of development work that gets done in Southeast Asia is outsourced to Vietnam. There are a lot of Japanese companies that have invested into development shops in Vietnam, and that's actually going to be really important as well. And it's just another way that Vietnam is entering itself into the digital economy. Okay, let us welcome our first guest, Gary Ng, the CEO at viAct. Let's do that right now. Gary, how are you? I love your background. It's nice to meet you, by the way. Okay, let's bring you in. Perfect. Okay, Gary, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to talk to you because we wanted to understand how AI-powered visual intelligence, something that's fascinating for me, will help industrial and construction businesses prevent frontline risk before it becomes operational failure. Before we get to that, tell us a little bit about viAct, if that's okay. Now, am I pronouncing that right? viAct?
Yeah, we call it viAct, both are okay.
Oh, no. Let's do the right thing, man. Like, I wouldn't call you Jerry. That would be the wrong name. It's Gary. So let's do
Then call it viAct, yes.
Got it. Go for it.
Let me start with the name first, right? The reason we call it viAct is because like it is vision to actions, right? So one of the firm beliefs when we started this journey is like there's a lot of like data which is undermined, basically undervalued in a sense. Like there's a lot of video data, there's a lot of like image data in the heavy industry such as like construction, which has not been captured, and this kind of data can be easily extracted value through the AI technology. So that was the idea. Is like back around 10 years ago when we started this startup, and all this like data would be able to feed to this like a data lake and able to do different kind of like automations. So this is one of the primary focus for us. And the reason why we focus in safety is because when we first started to introduce AI technologies around 2016, so nobody really understand what AI can do for construction. And we try to preach at that time is the one of the early technologies in AI is called computer vision. Basically, it's video analytics, turning videos and image data into like some variable data that they can predict and detect different objects like through these camera views. And one of the key pain points they told us is like in this heavy industry, because there's a lot of worker, so everything has to be safety first. And the bottleneck for them is like they can't even know like who is working in the job site, what they are doing, whether they're following the right compliance and like the procedure to do their stuff. So camera provide them a very easy access in terms of like. So that is one of the first thing point. And here we are, like after 10 years, this is becoming one of our core like business. And there's still so much that we are going to develop for helping the workers.
So when you look at construction sites, or even like you said, heavy industry, and you're based in Singapore, yeah?
Yeah, I'm based in Singapore.
So Singapore's also one of the...
majority of the time I'm in Hong Kong, but I also go to Singapore for business.
But I mean, so Hong Kong's same thing. One of the biggest ports in the world, one of the biggest deep water ports in the world. Singapore, again, one of the biggest deep water ports in the world. So the ports matter, the logistics stuff matter. But when you look at it, where do safety failures most often begin there? And I presume you're filming everything. You're installing a bunch of cameras. Is it places that people can't see? Is it the behavioral patterns of the workers? Is it just when processes break down? Like where does this stuff fall apart mostly?
So when we actually started, it was like the early day to even start installing different cameras in those work environments, right? So at that time, you can imagine there's only 4G, the 5G is not even available. So actually installing cameras is not something which is as easy as today, that you can stream all the data to cloud and start different kind of like AI processing. So at that time, there's only like a couple of different cameras, just like a security camera, CCTV stuff that you can capture different porn or sports or regions that interested to different scope of works or in different work domains. So that was like back then, that was really limited access in terms of the videos and image data. But moving like all these years, because of the internet's like advancements, the connectivity becomes so easy to deploy different cameras in different locations. So there are more and more cameras that you can deploy. And even today, we have developed different solutions that you can have cameras to be deployed in machinery, You can have cameras deployed as like mobile cameras for workers, but also you can have cameras even today in different drones and robots as well. So there are more data that it can be easily captured by different medias that you can deploy in the job site. It just runs everything automatically.
So safety, obviously, you see these signs everywhere, right? It says like, I'm sure the characters are the same in Chinese as they are in Japanese, or at least similar enough. But it's like safety is the number one concern, right? Anzen wa daichi is what it says in Japanese. But the point is that like the workers are they know that whether it's in heavy industry, whether it's in construction, whether it's at the port, that they're very concerned with safety for a bunch of different reasons. Whether it's self-interest or not, in a way, it doesn't matter. How comfortable are the employees now that there are cameras everywhere, in the sense that it does help them become much safer, because they can, the senior management that's in charge of safety can then do some evaluation of like, hey, if we do this job differently, if we change this process, everyone's going to be safer. You're not going to break your arm. You're not going to cut your finger and all this other stuff. How comfortable are the workers with this stuff now that there are cameras everywhere?
There are like a period of time, I think everywhere is the same. When you start deploying different camera solution, they feel a little bit intimidating, right? Because there's a cameras like keep watching them all the time, 24/7, right?
Right.
So there are a sense of like they're not feeling comfortable in the beginning. But I think as the technology start to move a little bit more towards like more cameras is being surrounded, I think for the construction firm, what they need to do is they also need to educate the workers the purpose of those cameras. There's a lot of data that we capture. We are protecting the data privacy of the workers as well. So for example, we have the AI processing that we are not capturing the face, and there's a lot of like sensitive informations that we are blocking those images so that it cannot be stored like permanently somewhere, so that it would leak some sensitive information as well. So those are the things that the construction firm has to tell the workers in order for them to feel a little bit safe. Also, on the other side, they still see the values by just starting to share the output, right? So in the beginning, as simple as just like, for example, safety compliance for the PPE, right? So whether the people are wearing safety helmets, for example. So those management will use our AI alert as a report to share with all the workers, like these are the events that we capture. We are not going to identify like who did wrong, but basically we are seeing this kind of like tendency, and there's a risk on these places. And the workers understood like people are violating, and the management is really concerned. And they start to act a little bit differently because they see the management are giving them the proof rather than just having a safety officer going there. Sometimes they just do the random check. There's no proof, and people tend to ignore once the safety officers are not surround the areas. So it gives them the ideas like there are some kind of like technologies basically to support them on the monitoring on these critical events.
Got it. How has, you mentioned the safety officers, how has the implementation of artificial intelligence and using that in the provision of safety monitoring changed the role of those safety officers from like guys and gals that would just like respond to incidents, as opposed to now, I would presume, preventing those incidents from happening?
So firstly, everything started with the data, right? So if you don't have the data being captured by those cameras or any devices or any media, then it's actually very hard for them to improve, basically to measure. The second part is the data, right? So the AI or the computer vision technologies basically are extracting data in real time from those cameras, right? So for example, you are counting the number of workers, you are counting the number of machines and different materials on those videos, cameras streams. At the same time, they are new part are being moved, some part are changed like over time. So it gives them those kind of data. And then if there's any violations, like for example, on any safety events, there is also another data points that they capture, right? After they capture all this data, they can analyze like what's the trends, what's the like historic data. And based on this historic data, what AI can do is like how can we today, like for example, using the LLM technologies, like what are the measures that we can recommend the construction firm or the safety officers to take actions in order for them to improve this kind of like safety behaviors. For example, how do we trigger real-time alerts locally so that those workers are aware of the situation? But at the same time, how can we generate an automatic report, which previously used like a couple of days just to generate a report? Today, we can just using LLM, maybe 5 minutes, you can automatically send emails to all the stakeholders with that generated safety report. And it has all the recommendations and measures like can they prevent this kind of like events in the futures. And lastly, is like with all these like latest AI technologies like the agent flow, there's things like even safety materials, like training materials, right? So, for example, one of the key things for changing people's behavior is that they need to go for relevant and safety materials and training materials, right? So how can we generate these kind of materials automatically, and it can send through all the different stakeholders, and so that they can pick up those trainings, and we can track whether they did all this like training and see the records and see how the progress on improvement.
Gary, are we at the point now where this stuff has been implemented long enough that, let's just say it's in heavy industry or in a factory, and you know, because building a new port is actually going to take a much longer time. But if you're building a new factory or even going to a new construction site, is it the case already that you have enough data, or you've garnered enough data over time from multiple sites and multiple factories and, you know, multiple construction places, that you can actually help these companies figure out new procedures as opposed to doing things the old way, or building a new factory in a way that's just, it's built differently so that the procedures that they do implement are safer, or even just like new workflows inside of existing factories where you go, look, if these people don't step in this, whatever it is, you know better than I do. I don't know how to explain this, but you understand the point where like you have enough data so you can say, hey, you know what? I understand what you're trying to accomplish, and we want to keep the output the same, but the process needs to change. And if you do these things, it'll be even safer. Does that happen already as well?
Yeah, definitely. Because you can imagine very simply, like if you put a cameras in just shooting a larger angles, like in the workplace, right?
Yep.
So what you're seeing is like different workers, different machinery, and different people walking in different paths. This is just an example. There's a lot more like you can see, right? So based on these AI detections on all these like objects and the motions of different objects, right? So what you can predict and what you can see from these videos is basically the patterns of how the workers are, for example, walking around in the job sites, right? What kind of like trade activities they're doing, right? And there's a lot of things that you can see is like whether sometimes even it makes sense for them to, when they initially doing the plannings for different allocations of those materials, resources, and workers, and even trade, you can see like why is, like some workers need to walk so far, like such a long distance, and even are closing some dangerous areas before they access to somewhere to pick up a material and then to finish the kind of like daily job that they are doing. And based on that, then the management can decide maybe when we're doing the planning, we should we adjust or modify the locations of different materials like storage. So the workers don't need to walk so far. Everything is very they don't know not to bypass like all these like dangerous areas as well. So there's a lot of things that you can see like based on the data that we can capture. So with the AI is getting more and more advanced, more data is being captured, the more possibilities for all these like advancements in terms of design, plannings, and workflow will happen.
So interesting. How do, like, where do AI agents, where does agentic AI fit into this, and where do they become useful in sort of frontline environments, right? Because they can see and do things, you can employ them at scale. They are expensive at some level, and you can comment on whether you agree with that or disagree with that. But I can see places where they'd be super useful, particularly if they're then going back in, I'm going to say, reporting to the existing sort of safety leaders or safety analysts that are inside the company. What role is agentic AI playing here?
I think AI agents in general is like replacing a lot of like human works, right? So for
Okay.
example, for us, the core technology, for example, we started with like video analytics. It just capture data, right, automatically.
Mhm.
This is kind of like automations as well. But after the data being captured, then there's a lot of things that you still need to do to complete the end-to-end output, right? So what AI agents really bring us is like it really focusing on having the right output, right? So for
Yeah.
example, after you see the data is being like captured, then there are a specific workflow that you use these data to like alert different people and then generate a different report or even create different tasks or even track whether the people have been following this through. So there's a lot of work the engineers, for example, or the safety officers still need to follow up after the data being captured. So with the AI agents right now, actually everything becomes so simple, right? Super dynamics in terms of like how they manage the different workflow, and then there's a lot of like new tasks can be easily automated by the agent itself.
How does AI and even the agentic AI side of this, if they are involved, but how does AI help you, not you, but the safety leaders, right, and the safety analysts minimize what I'll call alert noise and amplify alert signals that they can properly focus on the right things when there's a safety concern involved?
So there are a few parts, right?
Yep.
So, for example, in AI, in the revolution of the AI technologies, especially on vision intelligence, we see the technologies itself actually has been improved hugely with the help of the LLM as well. So we have the vision large language model. Basically, it's a text and the image models that basically you can prompt those image data, and it will be able to extract different informations from those videos as well. So you can talk to the images, you can talk to the videos, and extract very useful information.
Interesting.
So one of the few use cases, like now basically for those officers or those engineers, for them to extract information even from the previous videos records, it becomes super simple efforts, whatsoever. And then for them to review all this information to give to provide specific insights on something become really effortless. So this really gives them such a big help.
Got it. How should the executives that are managing these safety teams, how should they measure the return and the investments that they're making in this AI-powered intelligence, right? Because, there's token costs, there's all this other new cost associated with it. Yeah, some of the human costs go down, but how should they measure this? Is it like fewer incidents, lower insurance? Because I was thinking about insurance as well. Like, how do these things all get measured?
I think at the end of the day, if you look at some of the workflow that the is helping, is basically by improving the productivity and the efficiencies of different trade or different workers and engineers. Basically, you can have that ROI based on just the amount of hours that is being reduced for that specific works with the agent's help. Like, for example, now one person can do 3 persons work, then there's a lot of like productivity gain based on that using the agents.
Okay.
Of course, when we are developing this kind of like agent workflows, and one of the things that we have to pay attention is like, as you mentioned, there's a lot of like token usage which is consumed by the LLM as well.
Yep.
So when you design the workflow, not everything has to be completely like processed by the LLM. Sometimes it can be just like a software programs that can just do a very deterministic kind of like judgment on that specific workflow. Then you don't consume any tokens. So there's a lot of things that we are like having a good balance in terms of like where we choose like which path to go in terms of the automations as well.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to let you go, Gary. This was really, really interesting stuff. We'd love to have you back as your business continues to evolve and grow. Thank you again for coming on and doing this today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Felix, are you there? Felix, how are you today? Let's bring on our next guest, Felix Liao. There you are. Felix, can you hear me? I am super duper. It's great to have you here. Let's get you into the main room and then we can get going. You can hear me okay, yeah? Super duper. Where are you based? Oh, great. I like to tell people my daughter's on the Gold Coast right now. I hope she's okay. Okay.
Nice place.
I've never been, but look, that's the bane of my existence is like being a great dad. Okay, Felix, it's great to have you here. We wanted to talk to you about how data virtualization platforms help enterprises turn fragmented, essentially, and govern data into AI-ready business capabilities. Before we get to that, let's tell people a little bit about Denodo before we jump into the main part of this, yeah?
Sure, no problem.
Go for it. Tell us about Denodo.
Yeah, Denodo is a software company. We deliver a data management platform, but we do it in a quite a unique way in what we call a logical data management delivery, where instead of building ETL pipelines, building warehouse, moving data, replicating data, we deliver in what we call a federated query where you leave data as is, and we connect to the sources, and we bring the data together during query time. So it's a completely different data delivery mechanism that saves costs, saves money. And as it turns out, which we'll talk about, Michael, it's a very, very elegant way to deliver data in context for agentic AI.
So what makes it so useful in the context of agentic AI? It's interesting, right? Because you're talking about this federated data delivery stuff. How does that make? I presume that was you've been doing this for a while, so it's good that it works for agentic AI. But tell me how it's so much better than it might be otherwise.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, that's kind of the key question, right? And how long do we have, Michael?
As much time as you want, man. What day is today? It's Thursday. Like, what are you doing tomorrow, kind of thing? No, we have like 20-something minutes. But go ahead.
Yes, as a background, so I came from a traditional analytics background. I spent 11 years at SAS. You might have heard of SAS, and then at IBM prior to that. Yeah. So but what I've realized, what we realize is that for agentic AI, the traditional data infrastructure is insufficient. I mean, you've talked to many of your guests, and I think the consensus is very, very clear. Enterprises are struggling. So the question is why?
Yeah.
So we have a very, very specific view about that, right? So first of all, I think the stack is unclear for a modern AI applications, right? You know, depending on the vendor you talk to, everyone's talking about different stacks. So we have a view around what the stack should be. And one part of the stack we think is incredibly important, and that is the context layer. Okay, I mean, that shouldn't be secret to anybody for now, right? Because as powerful as LLM are today, it can reason, it can multi-step, but it has to reason on something, right? And in the enterprise context, that's your internal knowledge, your internal context. So that is, we think, the most pressing problem that enterprise has to solve today. And that's why it leads to Denodo, because the way you deliver the context, there are many ways. You can build a lake house, you can build a warehouse, but we think the best way for you to do that is do it through a logical layer where we can connect the data regardless where they are. So it could be a data warehouse, could be SAP, could be Salesforce. It could be a combination of operational and analytical data, which we think is critical. The second thing we think you need, again, shouldn't be any surprises now, is you need a semantic layer.
Yeah.
Semantic layer, the one that tells the agent what data you have, where it comes from, how do you use it, and preferably a single semantic layer. So your agent doesn't have to check 3, 4, 5, 10 different places. So that's important. And third thing where Denodo is incredibly useful when you use it as a delivery layer, which is a single delivery layer, is you simplify the security problem, which I think is holding most companies back. Because as you build multiple point-to-point solutions, the problem around security for agentic AI become incredibly complex.
Can we? Yeah, I mean, very complex. The more agentic AI you have, the more complex the security stuff is. We can talk about that last as well. Can we talk about what it's like? Because you said at the beginning of this conversation that, and again, you were like, how much time do we have? Because it's a kind of a complicated, but also super interesting conversation around the level of preparedness that whether it's a large enterprise or a medium-sized enterprise or even a small enterprise, how prepared their data situation is to actually be able to handle the modern tools that whether it's generative AI or agentic AI in particular, to be able to handle all that stuff. Because you're right, if the logical layer and the semantic layer don't give the proper context, you have a real problem because you're going to be making decisions based on data that in a way is kind of senseless. But the question for me is, when Denodo goes in or to provide services to clients or potential clients, if their data is not organized in a way that is sensible, how hard is it to do this to create this logical layer that makes sense, but also the semantic, which I think actually may be more important. We'll get to security in a second. But how difficult is it to get them in shape, for lack of a better term, so then they can use all these modern AI tools?
Yeah. So can you still hear me? I lost you there
I
for a
can.
while, Michael.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Nope, I got you. Did you hear what I said?
I can't really hear you. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't hear you, but I think I understand kind of the question is that from our point of view, in terms of preparedness, we don't think organizations are prepared enough. And I wrote a couple of posts recently, and talks about the fact that fundamentally, organization today, large bank telcos, they build in a legacy data infrastructure that is primarily focused on traditional analytics, data science, and so forth, right? So it includes ETL, pipelines, warehousing, centralizations. And as it turns out, those infrastructure we think are insufficient or unsuitable for agentic AI for a couple of reasons. I mean, I already touched on some of those things. The first and the most obvious one is the fact that when you look at traditional analytics, I mean, Michael, you came from banks and traditional financial institutions. You understand where it comes from. You have analytics, you have risk modeling. It's primarily to understand what's happened in the past. Okay, what's happened in the past and help human make decisions. But where we're heading agentic AI, as you can see, you've been talking to people, it is about decision making more and more so, right? So when you look about decision making, then you need more than historical analytical data. You need the combination of operational system and analytical system. I was just in a conversation with a bank recently, and one of the most important problems they need to solve is how do they build agentic AI, not only leverage on the data in the warehouse, but their operational system now, right? What is in the system now?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty complicated problem that traditional data architecture was never meant to solve.
Right. So this is can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Okay. So this is another big question. And I want to get to security, but let's just continue this part of the conversation. Because their legacy systems were not built to handle all of the things now that they are meant to be using, right? I know from my discussions with tons of other people in the agentic AI space that there's a lot of pressure from the C-suite and from the board of directors to say, we need to implement this stuff. We need to implement it yesterday. But how do you handle this dichotomy of we know we want to do this, all of our competition we think is doing it, but our legacy systems aren't set up to do it? We can't imagine that some of these enterprises and even small companies are going out and buying like a whole host of new technology to do this, not immediately. How do you integrate some of this stuff, whether it's from fixing the data or implementing the agentic AI, when the legacy systems themselves aren't sort of able to handle it at the scale that it's necessary?
Yeah, I don't think it's the question of that the system cannot handle it, right? So no surprises here, right? No surprises to anybody, Michael, right? So our view is that it's about activating your existing systems, right? As opposed to building new pipelines or warehouses for specific for agentic AI, because that's gonna take too long, right? And that's kind of where the Denodo philosophy is about, right? We are allowing you to connect to existing systems, whether it be operational system or analytic systems. We don't have to move or build pipeline or replicating systems, so you can get to the outcome much faster. To your point, you're 100% right. I speak to many organizations today to build agentic AI. There are many paths forward. There's no question about that, right? So the question is, what is the right path? And increasingly so, when I talk to organizations, there is increasing pressure to not build something in 6 months, but they need to do something now. And the question is, how do you do it? And our answer is that you have to change the paradigm of how you deliver data. And Denodo is a very different way to deliver data.
Are you seeing IT teams, for lack of a better term, in the enterprises with whom you're dealing also have to change their mindset? I mean, you were joking a little bit a moment ago where you're like, this can't be developed in 6 months. It has to be developed now, or at least have to start working on it now. But again, from my experience, and I haven't worked in a big company in over a decade now, right? But I don't think it's changed that much. How much more agile do these teams have to be from a mindset perspective to say, this is like the first piece of technology that's itself is moving so fast that we actually have to move faster to be able to keep up?
Yeah, 100%, right? So the pressures are building, right? I'm sure you're talking to your guests. The pressure cooker is absolutely building. Where on the
It
one
feels
hand,
like it.
oh, 100%. On the one hand, I've spoken to a lot of bank in Australia. On the one hand, they're seeing the gap around what is possible, what is actually being delivered, widen very, very quickly, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the other hand, they're extremely scared about the risks involved, right? So they're sort of stuck in the between, right? So, but I think there is no question that thing has to move forward, right? So we are seeing an increasing appetite to change how things are done, which is why we're getting a lot of meetings, a lot of inquiries to explain, hey, what about this way of doing things as opposed to building another warehouse, right? So I think the pressure is building. There is an increasing need to be more agile, particularly being pressured by the AI team, right? I go into meeting with AI specialist team where they don't care how you build the pipeline; they just need it today.
Well, so this is also interesting too, right? Are you seeing inside of big enterprises where, 2 years ago, there was no AI team, not in the same way that there is now. There might have been a machine learning team. There may have actually been a generative AI team, but there was no agentic AI team. And there was no sort of overall team, I presume, that was saying, we're now in charge, not in charge, we're now responsible for how the firm itself and this particular department and particular division um, enables or employs AI. How is that changing the dynamics as well internally as part of this sort of pressure cooker that you were talking about?
Well, you see it from top to bottom, right, Michael? Right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're seeing now there's chief AI officer all over the place. In fact, there's
Yeah.
some new ones just being hired in Australia. So, and they report directly to the CEO. I think the one in CBA, for example. So I think there is a new hierarchy forming, and I see, and I talk to these people on a day-to-day basis. They are kind of a specialist team. Some come from traditional data, IT, some come from traditional data science, but
Mm.
they're specialized in terms of awareness of LLM, how to build agents, what does the orchestration harness look like? These things are, I guess, SWAT team. But they ask us very, very simple, right? I've been many meetings with these things. They use Claude, they use Copilot, and they just want the context now in a safe, secure way. On the other hand, the data team is saying that, yeah, give me 6 months, let me build a warehouse, and that pressure is definitely building. I see it every day.
Do you feel that tension between like the data team and the AI team, where like the AI team is like, let's go, we're moving really
100%,
fast, and the
100%,
data team is just like,
100%.
what are we doing, really?
Yeah, to be fair, you worked in bank, right? I think a long time
Yep.
ago. I mean,
Wasn't that long ago.
so that the risk involved in using data for GDI in bank is extremely high risk. There's no
Yeah.
question about that. So how do you do in a secure way? Yeah, you have to move incredibly fast. Is, I guess, the challenge of our lifetime, right? So again, we think Denodo is a very, very elegant solution in that, but it is a change of paradigm.
Do you want to talk about some of those risks that you've been mentioning, and then how working with Denodo addresses some of those risks, particularly on the data side?
Yeah, just in a very, very simple way. Very, very simple way. Let's say you want to build a customer service agent, okay? And then those customer agents obviously need access to correct data, your email, your phone number, your last interaction, your historical purchases, and the data have to get access to that data, right? So, and then those data might come from different systems, right? 2, 3, 4, 5 different systems.
Yeah.
So how do you build a consistent security policy where you have to mask the data appropriately? We have to redact the data at the right time so that one hand, the agent knows enough to be useful, but on the other hand, is not exposed to data that is not supposed to do. That's an incredibly complex IT engineering problem, right?
It is.
So having a single layer, aka the Denodo in this case, doesn't eliminate the difficulty, but makes it a lot easier. As opposed you have to build a control layer in 3, 4, 5, 10 different systems. You build it in a single layer in terms of how the data is delivered.
Right. So it sits in the middle of everything that's going
Exactly.
on.
Exactly.
Our financial services industry, financial services companies, and I'll sort of separate out insurance companies as well, even though they do provide financial services. Are they looking at data virtualization in a way that's different as this foundation for AI readiness than other vertical companies?
I mean, data visualization has been a technology that's been around for quite a long time.
Yep.
I'm sure it has always been a very useful tool in a toolbox. But for various different reasons,
Mm.
People don't believe in it. It works, and the momentum behind ETL or warehouse is too strong. So there's always been a need for it, and this is why Denodo has been in business for a very, very long time.
Right.
I think what's happened now is because the pressure on AI, because the need to change is so great, people have a greater appetite for changes. And this is why virtualization, I think, has become a very, very hot topic for most organizations today.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned a couple of moments ago about like the data and whether companies should actually have access to it. How should they design the access to this data? You said it's a very complex problem. I completely agree with you. And I hear this from a lot of people all the time. And everybody talks about governance, but nobody talks about like what that governance actually looks like. Do you want to address that a little bit as well?
Yeah,
Particularly
I
from a
mean,
data perspective?
incredibly complex topic, right? But
Yeah.
today, right, a very, very basic model would be, if you are an agent, you're working on behalf. Like, let me give you a really simple example. At the
Go ahead.
moment, we're working with a organization building what we call analytical agent, right? Instead of you going to Tableau analyst, you have an agent using Denodo and Claude to do the analytics, right?
Mhm.
Statistical analysis, forecasting. In those cases, essentially what you want to do is give the agent just enough rights for whatever the analyst is. So the agent essentially have to um, impersonate whatever the person is. So you have to have the necessary infrastructure around. If Felix is doing that work, how do you apply the security of Felix in that agentic process? That's a very, very simple example, right? In that case, we allow single sign-on for that particular agent as if he or she was me or it was me, and
Mhm.
then all the security access is controlled through the node. And that's a very, very basic example, right? More example, more we have more complex example around things like attribute basis control, right? So for example, if the agent is being used at a certain time, we might want to redact that data. So it's a very complex problem, but I think it can be simplified by having a single control layer in terms of where you apply those restrictions.
So let me let me add a little bit more complexity into this, if you don't mind. Again, just because I think it's interesting, and I like to create comparisons between like the analog world and the digital agentic world because I think it makes sense, right? At some level, humans are the ones trying to accomplish this analysis at some level, right? Even if the agent is going out and doing it. But in the real physical world, if Felix and I were working together and I was in a different department, but you needed that analysis to provide some information to your customer, but you didn't have fundamental access to that data because it was from my group or whatever the reason is, you could literally walk over to my desk. I could peek and you could ask me for access to that data or just some data, which I could like print out or give it to you in a file. And then you could use it to sort of finish and complete your analysis. Maybe I would need to ask my boss, hey, Bill, is it okay if I give this stuff to Felix? But at the end of the day, that process doesn't take so long. If we're actually working in a nice sort of, work culture. How does that work on the agentic side where you've built in the proper governance, you've built in the right permissions, you've built in the right, all this kind of stuff. But let's say to finish the analysis, you need some more information to which you don't normally have access. Does the agent come to a human and say like, I finished what I could finish, but I don't have access to this data. Can you give me access to it? Or can the agent itself go out and ask another agent that has access to data for how does that work from a governance standpoint and sort of from a data sharing standpoint? I know it's complex, but you understand the reason why, yeah?
Well, you asked hard-hitting questions today, Michael.
I don't mean to be hard.
No,
I'm
no,
just
no.
interested.
No, that's a great question, right? So let me
Thank
give
you.
you some pointers.
Please.
So the way we give permission to human as well as agent in the past has always been multi-layered. So for example, you could set up a system in such a way that we actually tell you there is data here. There's actually a set of custom data here through
Right.
metadata, but you cannot query it. As a simple example. And this kind of ties out to
Just to note that the
exactly.
data exists. Yeah, go
Exactly.
ahead.
There's
Yep.
metadata and semantic, right? So that's a good example where, as human being, right, like I can see that data, I want to use it, but I can't query it. So what I do is, go through a request management system. I think we can do something very, very similar with agents. If you want that to be restricted, limited access, what we could do in a semantic layer is provide that just enough semantic to say that, you know what, there is a customer data here that is based on these columns, but you're not allowed to query it, or you have removed the access. And I think agent now is smart enough, if you provide that context, from what we've seen from experimentation, that it can work out the fact that, you know what, hey, Felix, if I have access to that table, I think I can give you a better answer. I think agent is smart enough to make it trigger another action to request for that. It's very, very similar to how human would work.
Got it. It should be that way. I do think there's a lot of places where the digital world should mirror the offline or the analog world.
100%, 100%.
So one more thing, maybe, and then I let you go. Although who knows? I'm always coming up with other questions for you. Sorry, I hope that this is okay with you.
That's all right.
Although you've been awesome at this, so I really appreciate it. But the one kind of data we haven't talked about yet is real-time data.
Yep.
How does this change the dynamic, right? This access to streaming, structured or unstructured data. How does it change the kind of operational decisions that enterprise can automate or just even change or augment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that goes to the fundamental challenge I mentioned earlier in terms of why it's so hard to build agentic applications, because today most of the big vendors, I'm sure you've spoken to people from Snowflake and Databricks, they're primarily building on the basis of analytical foundation, right? You build a pipeline, you move stuff in here, it might have been from a string, it might have been from ETL, it doesn't matter, it lands somewhere. So that, I think, where is a lot of the problem lies, where if you build agentic AI on that foundation, it is based on analytical historical data.
Right.
And what, to the point I made earlier, right? So I think what organization needs to build and evolve the architecture is they need to tap into, not so much real time. I think real time sometimes is kind of a loaded, confusing word. Operational data. Stuffing SAP now, stuffing CRM, stuffing the real-time API feed from the exchanges. They need to tap into that at the same time as the analytical data. And that's difficult to do because at the minimum level, you have two semantic going on at the same time. But the unique thing about Denodo, and we don't have to go into the technology, is that we can actually build a single unique, a unified semantic construct that combines both. It sounds like magic, but that's kind of what we do.
It sounds like, but I mean, wasn't it Steve Jobs who said like all great technology is really just like one step away from magic? He said something like that, I think. Not that Steve Jobs is always
right?
relevant, but you understand the point, right? It should feel like magic, yeah.
Exactly. So instead of real time, I think the problem the organization needs to focus on today is think about how do you converge the operational world, which in the past has been sort of left alone, with the analytical world, which most company has millions of infrastructure. How do you converge those two?
Yeah, because I don't think those two things can remain separate. Not in the world in which we're just about to live with. There's agentic AI and all this real time information coming out. I don't think those two things can be separate anymore.
Yeah, and exactly right. And just to kind of tie it all together, right? So that I think that's one of the main problems in terms of how do you source this data from two different worlds in the past, and we haven't really tried to combine them. When you go to the next level up, and the question becomes even more complex. Let's say you can connect to those two things, and you can connect to them one-on-one. The next bigger problem now is you need a unified context layer, right? And we talk about this, right? And that's difficult. How do you do that in a seamless way? How do you do that in a way that the agent doesn't have to interpret multiple different layers? And that's kind of the challenge of I mean, Snowflake just had their summer a couple of days ago, and there was context everywhere. It's all about context engineering. So I think that's another problem enterprise would have to solve.
Okay, Felix, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate all your time today. You're right. We definitely did need more time. If you want, you're welcome to come back on the show, or any other representative from Denodo is welcome to come back on the show whenever you guys want. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this today.
No problem. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Bye for now. Okay, we are going to welcome Matthew Smith, the CEO at MyPass Global, onto the show as well. Let's bring Matthew in. Matthew, how are you? Can you hear me okay? I am doing super. Where are you based? Another guy from Sydney. Awesome. Okay, give us 1 second to bring you into the main room. There you are. Okay, Matthew, look, thank you so much again for coming and doing this today. We wanted to have you here to talk about how verified workforce data can help regulated industries operate safer, faster, and more intelligently. But before we get to that, tell us a bit about MyPass Global.
Yeah, so thank you, and thanks for having me. So MyPass Global, we're essentially workforce onboarding and compliance software. So it's centered around a digital skills passport. It's a validated record of training and competency for a worker, and through a permission structure that's shared with either companies they work for or sites at which they work at. So the end outcome we're really shooting for is companies not only make that process more efficient, they have that assurance that everyone on site is trained and competent. So that's
where does that workforce data come from, and how does it get verified?
Yeah, good question. So it can come from multiple sources. It can either come from the training company that's done the training. It can come from online training. It can be government or state issued licenses or certs that the individual can upload, or the administrator for the company they work upload. So this is the whole problem, right? It comes from many different places in terms of that nuclear view of someone's training and competency profile.
Got it. Where is workforce compliance become like most important? Is it in the resource? Is it in utilities, healthcare, education? Like, why has this become such a hard data problem rather than just an HR or training problem?
Yeah, it's different for different situations. So we've been primarily focused amongst sort of critical sectors, so energy, mining, heavy industrial, where if things go wrong, they go really wrong, and things blow up. So obviously, having the right person with the right skills is key to those. But equally, we've got clients in volunteering and healthcare, where that's also critical, right? You want the person who's looking after someone in hospital or a care facility not being a bad actor or not being someone that's not competent for what they're doing, because lives are at stake there as well. So it actually depends on the sector, but ultimately I struggle to think of any situation right down to your Uber driver. You don't want someone that's not licensed or trained to do what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't want anybody with a criminal, but like, I just want to make sure that the person that I'm dealing with, no matter what industry in which they operate, that they're like safe and that they've been vetted.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think about this all the time. I got into a taxi on a small Japanese island in one of the smaller Okinawan islands. And I won't tell you what this guy was doing, but I will just tell you that the paper bag he was carrying did not make me feel safe. Underneath his seat. I'm not kidding. But it's a metaphor, and that's a true thing that's actually happening. But it's a metaphor for behavior, right? And whether you have a paper bag under your seat and you're driving, or you're doing just other things that haven't been vetted, no matter what industry, and particularly, you're right, I wrote it down, in energy. So if you're working on like an oil rig, or mining, if you're working in a mine, or God forbid you're working in heavy industry, and you're not skilled enough to do it, you're right. When it goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong, right?
Exactly. And lives are at stake, you can't sugarcoat that. And we've had clients that have kicked off big programs of work for us because they had someone who initially came to their site or facility trained and competent for the task they were originally assigned to do, but that changed. They got asked to, jump up on a step ladder and use essentially a flamethrower, for example, to melt off some steel lugs, and they weren't actually trained to use that particular piece of equipment, and fell off the top step of that ladder because they weren't trained and competent to do that task, and nearly ended their own life and had months of rehab from burns because they were the happy helper and the supervisor had no way of checking in the field whether that individual was trained and competent. So that visibility in real time and in the field is actually a really key component there as well.
So can I just dig a little bit deeper into that example? Because I'm getting the sense, and I know this for a fact, actually, or at least I think I know it for a fact, that you didn't just make that up off the top of your head. Like, this is probably something you actually saw come by your desk or someone's told you about. But how does MyPass Global disintermediate a problem like that happening when in real time? Because it may be the case that that person actually knew how to use a flamethrower, that they were comfortable stepping up on a ladder, and that the supervisor would have known that and said, Bob, please go up there and take care of that thing. We haven't asked you to do that in a month or so, but we know you're qualified to do it, or vice versa. Because I can imagine a situation where the employee would be like, I'm not doing that because that's way too dangerous and I have no idea how to do it. And the manager would just say, look, if you don't get up there and do that, you're fired. Right? In little instance, how do you have that data come up in that situation in real time so that people can actually know like what the skill set is and what it isn't, so you don't have those problems again?
Yeah, it's a great question. So firstly, and I didn't sort of answer that earlier, but we actually validate the licenses and certs that come in there. So you can't just upload a first aid certificate or a forklift ticket into MyPass and it's taken at face value. So we've got a team of people, and we've got some AI enablement and process automation there to validate that back to the source wherever possible. So that's kind of the first point is what they say they have true and correct. The other thing I'll kind of say is that if someone's trained, that's different to are they competent? So in that same example, I might have got my forklift ticket 20 years ago.
Right.
Renewed it every 5 years. But when was the last time I jumped on one, and do I even know how to lift stuff up? And even if I know how to lift it up, do I know how to do it for that task? Do I know how to do small loads versus like big tanks or whatever it may be? So there's a sort of a legislative driver in Australia here, which is verification of competency. It's called VOC. And so for high risk work, when things are really, critical tasks like rigging, scaffolding, crane driving, etc., you can't just take the ticket or the license. You've got to deem them as competent. So that's kind of one way that that's getting addressed, because I might think I'm competent, but someone else might have a different view, and it might be task specific.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say the last bit of that is making that data visible in the field. So you can scan the QR code on the passport. You can check in real time whether you're connected to that worker or not. And you can also assess that against a compilation of skills that make up a role. So you can kind of see a percentage match of, here are the 5 things I need to complete that task. I've got all 5 because that's what that role requires, as opposed to I've got the base component. So we're trying to bring together what competent means in the context of that task, which our clients can determine. That's not for us to determine.
Yep.
But they can look for the ingredients that have been validated for that cake, so to speak, to make sure it's what they think it is.
So do I understand this correctly? Does this mean that in the industries where you're providing this service, right, and let's go back to it, energy, mining, heavy industry, and others, I'm sure, that there's a digital passport that every employee for the companies with whom you're working carries around? So there's, I love nomenclature. There's certs. Can I say that? This means certifications, maybe for people that are playing at home. But the certs are actually up to date and valid and have been verified. So literally I can just go to my boss, look, you can check here, dude. Like I haven't driven a forklift like this in 30 years. And all the new technology on here, the touch screens and all the new things that are built in, I don't know how to do it. And I don't want to put myself in danger, and I don't want to make you liable for something. So can we just find somebody who is qualified to do this? It's a much better way. That digital passport is actually on somebody's phone or device or whatever. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So this digital, we call it a skills passport, hence the name MyPass.
Yep.
That has a unique ID for that individual. I own that data. I own that record. I get to choose who gets to scan that code or get access to it if I work for an employer as part of their dashboard. And that goes with me for perpetuity. So it's actually a free service for the workers. We don't charge the individual workers. It's the companies that are our customers.
Yep.
And so that's mine forever. And so I get notified of training expiring and I can do something about it, upload the new one. So we're trying to, I guess, put this digital wallet, if you like, in their hands. And they may not come back to that site for 12 months, but it's still valid, it's up to date, and we support them through that whole process so that they can present those artifacts, as you said, for either I do want to do that task or I don't. And it's validated on an ongoing basis.
So 2 things to follow up, if you don't mind. Let's say I'm not even employed right now, but I do have all these skills and there's no charge to me to use MyPass Global. Can I do it and get verified for all of these things so that when I do get a job, I can just show them like, here are all my verified skills, almost like a, like a digital resume at some level, say like, I told you I could do this. Here's the verification that I can. So it helps me be employed. Or secondly, if I switch companies and my company doesn't use MyPass, I could just go to them, guys, what are we doing here? Like, you don't even know what my skills are. Shouldn't we employ this thing or deploy this thing here so everybody can have access to this? Do those things happen actually in real life?
Yes to both. Yes to both. So companies can use MyPass to onboard and request the passport as part of it. So I can set it up for the first time. But if I'm in the situation where I've already got it, like you shared there, I can actually share a unique URL with that individual and choose whether they can see the documents or not see the documents. And so you can kind of think of that as like your LinkedIn link, except on steroids, because I've got validated industry-specific quals. So the answer to both of those is yes.
I liked it's so interesting that you mentioned LinkedIn. I always wonder like why these bigger companies and bigger platforms haven't done this. They're just not thinking in the same way. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
It's because it's hard.
No, it's super hard.
And it's hard to go, like, I think the simple reason, and someone at LinkedIn might have another reason, but I think the simple reason is the universe of training and certs is ginormous for LinkedIn. Like they're basically covering every job role in the world. Whereas we've been very methodical about trying to get critical mass adoption by sector and by industry.
Right.
So that there might be 15,000 certs or whatever for that industry, but we've got them all. They're the metadata is locked away, and whether the individual's uploading against it or the company's requesting it, we go right down to individual course codes so that it's very clear what that base element of training is. To do that at scale across the globe would be quite an undertaking.
I can't even begin to imagine. And I'll share a story with you. And I've already shared this with LinkedIn twice, and nothing against them. I'm not trying to slag somebody off. Like that's not the point here, but like, I can't even get my passport verified on LinkedIn. So the fact that they could verify like these 15,000 certs in vertical A, as opposed to the hundreds of thousands of them in other industries, I think would be really hard for them to do. I find company culture actually really interesting. When you introduce this type of service into a company, how does this, what did you call it? Like a digital skills passport, change the relationship between management and the worker? or even a contractor, right? Because now, like, I actually have some leverage as a worker to say, like, I can't do that. I'd love to help here, but I can't. How does it change that relationship?
It's probably more the other way. It's probably more the workers saying, I can do that, bring me on board. And don't you realize that I've actually got the
Fair enough.
certificate of payment, right? Because they're actually more trying to go the other way. They're more trying to say, hey, aren't you aware that I can also, rig and sling a load, or I've got this confined space ticket, or I can operate this crane, or whatever it is. So they're trying to show they're as multidisciplined as possible to get the better paid gigs, right? Whether it be a data center or an offshore oil rig, they're trying to position their skills. So it's probably kind of goes more the other way. And, the relationship kind of changes more from being transactional. Like so my backstory is I used to be in construction. I used to mobilize teams for maintenance services, contractors, and all the rest of it, 50 to 500 people every week. And my back office team would just be gathering licenses and certs and photocopies and people coming into the office. Like, it's not high value interaction. The interaction for our clients now is not give me the certs and all the rest of it. Like, our team does all of that validation. The software holds it. It's like, hey, tell me what you want coming up. Like, would you be interested in this project? Like, hey, I think your skills would match this. Or, hey, how about we get you going from this project to this one to this one? And that means you can take that holiday in Bali and you've locked away 5 weeks of work. Like, you have meaningful discussions with them, and you actually connect at a human level rather than a transactional level.
Interesting. So you've made me think about something, and I don't know if you guys have addressed this yet. And again, it's large, but is there a use for this for university graduates, whether it's PhD graduates or MBA or master's degree graduates, or even just bachelor's or BS graduates as well, to verify all the information for the stuff that they've learned for new job entry and entrance? Do you know what I mean? In the same way, because I've heard so many stories when I was at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs of not just those companies, but other companies. Like, people just come in and just have a resume that goes like, I got a 4.0 at Harvard. I studied mechanical engineering, and none of it was true. Do you know what I mean? Is there a way to do that for college, for universities all over the world that can also participate in this kind of thing? And then you can update that as you go along in your career.
Totally. Yeah, there is. It's not an area we're obviously focused on right now, but absolutely, like, the infrastructure already built would facilitate that, because in that context, you would upload your mechanical engineering degree and so forth. So, for example, my degree sits in MyPass. It's been validated by our team. So provided you've got the list of qualifications and certs, and we've got an ability to validate it, then there's nothing stopping that. And equally, whilst that's just the hard skills, the kind of more capabilities, if you like. So, on the job training or people skills or whatever else you might develop on top of that, provided there's an attainment associated with that and it's being assessed, then we can record it. So as long as there's an outcome or an artifact, then you can do whatever you like on a platform like ours.
Super interesting. Where does the data live, right? So is that data mine? Is that data MyPass's? If I'm working at a particular company, is it the company owns that data? Like, who owns the data?
Yeah, great question. So the data is owned by the individual, with the exception of company-specific training. So a company induction or whatever, that's their IP, and that is not visible to any other company. But we've made it very clear, like, it's a bottom-up data structure, and in the world of data privacy and breaches and so forth, like we've kind of inadvertently landed on the sort of first principles model that satisfies that too. The individual owns it, and therefore it's with their permission that companies get access to it, and they're explicit about which companies they share it with.
And what are the biggest gaps you're seeing now in these companies where, for their preparedness for this type of service for them? Do you know what I mean? Because it does take a certain amount of infrastructure for them to do this, but also a certain amount of internal training for people to know, like, this is how we're going to understand what the skill set of our workforce actually is. And I presume there's a way to run sort of data analysis on this as well. Like, once I enter into company A, I give them access to my data. Everybody else who's in that company has access to MyPass. They see all this data. Can they then categorize it, analyze it, to iterate on all that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, they can. I mean, out of the box with our sort of company-facing portal, it's not just the aggregation of the passports. It's the ability to track compliance against your skills matrices and requirements. It's got a whole onboarding workflow and deployment workflow for projects and contracts and all the rest of it. So there's, a whole lot of kind of baked-in workflows and reports and dashboards. what we're now doing is giving companies the ability to export that into a Snowflake, for example, or a Databricks or whatever it may be, and allow them to surface that up to make operational decisions and merge that, so they can use that for resource leveling across multiple projects or clients, or analyzing internal processes and how long they took. So all that becomes possible if you don't have your data trapped in silos, and that's kind of the biggest gap we see where companies are before they come to MyPass versus once they've worked with us. Is so many companies are just lacking that single source of truth of their workforce.
Yeah,
and so if you don't even know if it's the same worker and they're existing multiple times, or you're revalidating the same certs and you're calling the same thing another thing, it doesn't matter what you put on top of it from an enablement point of view or an AI point of view. If you don't have validated, clean data, you're not out of first base. And so that's kind of an enablement factor that companies have kicked off with us for that reason alone. Is that
I'm glad you brought up the clean data thing, because that was going to be the last thing that I would ask you, but you've already answered it. So I'm just going to thank you for coming and doing this. I hope this has been as good for you as it has been for me. I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot, and I just want to say thank you for coming and doing this today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Okay, let's bring in our next guest, Alon Kaufman, CEO and co-founder at Duality Technologies. Alon, how are you? I am doing great. Are you at a standing desk? And where are you based?
Son of Israel. Is the standing a problem, or?
No. I'm just curious. It's not a problem. If it was a problem,
I would have like a background, but I learned now it's not. So I'm at my standing desk.
No, you look great. Okay, we wanted to have you come on. And by the way, thank you for all the pre-recording back and forth. I really like when the guests are actively involved. We wanted to talk to you about how privacy-preserving artificial intelligence can or will help businesses unlock sensitive data collaboration, something we talk about a lot here, without exposing the underlying data. Before we get to that, talk a little bit about Duality Technologies, what it does, and then we'll get to some of the topics we have, yeah?
Definitely, yeah. A pleasure to be here, really.
Thank you. So talk to me about Duality.
Excellent. So I like to talk about the founding story of Duality, coming from really personal challenges that I experienced.
Go for it.
Really solving them. So I'm a pure data person. I done my PhD in computational neuroscience. And before this whole wave of AI and data science, I was really solving business problems using data. And the number one thing when you come to solve business problems using data is the ability to combine different data sets, different data properties from multiple domains. And we as human beings know it. Like, I don't know, let's say you want to choose a school for your kid. So it's not just the teachers, it's not just the neighborhood, it's not just who learns there. You take a lot of different elements into account when you make that decision.
Sure.
The world of data and AI is all the same. It's not just the amount of data you get, but it's the variety of the data. And there's in many cases in finance, in government, in healthcare, and so on. I'll give you a few examples. Please. You want to combine these data sets in order to get value. So let's just take healthcare, for example. If you're trying to treat patients or do some research, if you're just looking at the clinical outcomes of a patient, you see one level of information. But obviously, if you now can add genomic data or wearable data or diet data, you see a much broader picture of the patient or the person. So independent of the model, if you're using a strong AI model or a doctor or a simple model, the more domains, in this case, clinical data, genomic data, wearable data, diet data, obviously gives you a better picture and you can make a better decision. We call this collaborative analytics. So wherever you go, this need to do collaborative analytics is the main enabler to the value you create out of using models like AI, but any kind of data analytics.
So to do this collaborative analytics, you may have to look at data that's encrypted in some place or some way or form, right? How do you because a lot of people don't, and a lot of companies don't want to expose their data per se. Could be a big problem. How do you use this concept of collaborative data, particularly in the world of artificial intelligence, without decrypting that data, without exposing that data, but still getting the benefit of the access to that data, if that makes sense?
Spot on. That's really why Duality exists. So in order to do this collaborative analytics, you have to combine data from multiple sources.
Yep.
As you said, the data in some of these sources is protected. It can be protected by encryption. It can be protected because of different regulations. It can be different privacy concerns, different business concerns. But you do run into a challenge that these data sets are basically locked up because of multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind Duality is bringing concepts and technologies that allows you to analyze this data across these different domains or departments or companies without ever being exposed to the data, but driving and getting the utility out of it.
So how does that work?
So
what kind of technology is using?
So there's a set of new technologies out there in the world today which are called privacy-enhancing technologies or privacy-preserving technologies that basically allow you to analyze the data while it's protected or encrypted. So let me try and give a simple example.
Please.
Today, when you try to protect data, you basically encrypt it.
Yep.
Encryption is like putting data into a vault. So we have what's called encryption at rest, which is you encrypt the data when it's on your machine, meaning you put it into the vault and you lock it with a key. And we also have encryption in transit, where you send it over the internet and you make sure it's encrypted during the journey. But when you come to analyze it, you always have to open the data. And that's where the risk happens. With these technologies that Duality does, you don't have to ever decrypt the data, even during the analysis. So just like, a simple analogy, it's like, let's say I have a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle that I want to solve, and I want you to solve it for me, but I don't want you to see what's in my puzzle. So I can take my pieces, put it in my vault, lock it, I'll have the key, I'll send you the vault with a jigsaw puzzle in it. And with these kinds of technologies, just imagine that you can make the puzzle without seeing the pieces, send it back to me, and I can see the result. So in simple words, it detects or detaches the analysis from actually looking at the data. And this is a new type of encryption that's being used. It can be hardware-based or software-based. That's a little bit more details. Yep. But that's the idea, that the analyzing party is not really exposed to the data, but it is doing the computations and deriving the utility.
And is this zero knowledge proof stuff?
This is in a family of zero knowledge proofs. These types of technologies I'm talking about are include knowledge proofs, includes things like fully homomorphic encryption.
Yep.
Includes like things like multi-party computations, and even use of what's called trusted execution enclaves, which are hardware solutions for the similar kind of challenge.
And what is the level of confidence we have when these answers come back, particularly for data that's encrypted, that's in the vault you were talking about? The puzzle's a great example of this. How do I know if I've actually solved the puzzle? Like, what type of feedback do I get that says, yes, you've completed that puzzle, I've given it back to Alon, and now he knows that it's right?
Yes, great question. So first of all, one of the great properties of this technology is that it's accurate and it doesn't hinder the data. Typically, when you come and you try and apply, let's call them old privacy technologies to data, you anonymize the data, you add noise to the data, and nearly by definition, in order to hide privacy elements, you kind of hinder the value of the data. With these technologies, you keep the data intact, you just encrypt it, and your assurances to know that the data is correct are basically in the mathematics and the theories around this, that the computations are accurate. And it's the same way like any service you do, in any kind of service you consume on the cloud, the question is, how do you know it's correct or not? This doesn't change you. It remains the same question. So you have to trust that the party you're asking is doing what you asked it to do. But these technologies, just because it's encrypted, doesn't mean it kind of disrupts the value of the technology, of the computations.
How does it change the economics of sharing data across these companies? Do you know what I mean?
I think that's at the end of the day the biggest kind of value here, because what's actually happening in the world is that the pace that the data is growing is way, way bigger than the pace you're getting value out of it. So
Go
there's
ahead.
this kind of unequal equation. The data access is growing, but the value is limiting. And the reason is that in many cases, the highly valuable data is locked behind different silos, different privacy rules or confidential reasons, and so on. So this technology opens up two main streams. One, by accessing more private data, like this healthcare example I gave, the minute you can really correlate clinical data with genomic data and so on, you can get way, way more utility out of it. So one, you can start to provide more value, which creates more economy around it. And the second thing, and I can give you some concrete examples.
Please.
If you want to do this kind of joint analysis today, just going through getting the regulatory approvals can take many, many months, if not years. So for example, we recently done a cancer research study between UK and US. So that means you're doing a cancer research study on sensitive data. In this case, it was pediatric cancer. You're not allowed to just share the UK data with the US or vice versa. And you have to do this analysis across these borders. Just to get regulatory approvals typically takes many, many months to do such kind of research. With these technologies that are approved, by the way, and we also got approval for these technologies by IMDA in Singapore and in other countries, you can shorten that process from months to weeks. So the time to run the analysis or the time to value is dramatically decreased. So once again, the economics here grow. One, you can do things that you could not do before.
Sure.
And two, you dramatically shorten the approval cycles to use these things because with these technologies, it's much easier for the regulators to basically approve these kind of analysis.
So let me follow up on this a little bit, if you don't mind. You said that the pace of the data growth, and I mean, I can see this just in the stuff that we do, is way faster than the ability to use all that data and to sort of garner economic benefit from it. But the other thing too is if you're using collaborative data, so if the data is not mine, if it's encrypted somewhere else, I presume I'm not using that data for free. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it moves the economic equation from the way you look at it today is that if we're trying to collaborate,
right,
at the end of the day, I have to give you my data and then you can use it and there's a price for my data or whatever. With this concept that we use, you're not sharing data, you're moving to sharing insights.
Yep,
So
fair enough.
There will be, let's say we two financial institutes, and we understand that doing a KYC and know your customer analysis can be more beneficial if we do it between the two of us. Yeah, we probably will have some kind of financial exchange between us, but neither of us has to give up the data. We're just talking about the insights around the KYC. So it moves the whole economic equation from buying data or for exchanging data to talking about exchanging insights or selling insights, which is really where you want to go because the data is the most proprietary, sensitive, private information these corporates have. At the same time, you want to utilize it, but you don't want to share it. And that's exactly where these technologies come in and open a whole new kind of economic value chain. So
what role does synthetic data play, or can synthetic data play, where in that case you have no risk of exposing any private information or any security information? And how does it change the economics of the obtaining of those insights that you were just talking about? Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. Maybe we should have took a step back. In this world of privacy enhancing technologies, multiple types of technologies. Some protect the data
when it's with encryption, like we mentioned.
Yep.
Some things called like federated learning ensure that you can run the data where it is without the need to move it. Other technologies like synthetic data generate non-real data sets that have the same kind of statistical behavior of the data.
Right.
And each of them solves slightly a different problem. They're not interchangeable and they're complementary. So let me give you two classical examples around synthetic data.
Go for it.
If you want to train an AI model or a machine learning model on images of, just say, cats, and you have an endless number of cats, and you know to create quite nicely or quite well a synthetic representations of images of cats and generate many, many more of them. That's an ideal use case for synthetic data, because you can build synthetic cats if you want and teach a machine learning model.
Sure.
But on the other extreme, let's say you want to try and diagnose a patient for cancer or do a cancer research.
Right.
You cannot do that on synthetic data, or trying to detect a money laundering scheme, because that data is not synthetic. That's very, very personal.
Fair enough.
So within this extreme, from really large amounts of data that you have a good statistical representation where synthetic data can really replace some of the data and protect privacy, to the real kind of personal records, there's a whole continuum. In some cases, synthetic can be used. In some cases, it cannot be used. And obviously, it hinders some of the accuracy. The less kind of data representation you have, the more challenging it is. But definitely, that's a technology in this mixture of federated learning, encryption in use, synthetic data, and so on.
That's a great answer, actually. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Again, I was just curious about how that played out, but you're right. If I can't not use synthetic data if I'm trying to help somebody with their cancer analysis, it just doesn't make any sense in this context. Can I ask you this, though? We haven't spent a lot of time talking about artificial intelligence at all. What are the bottlenecks around deploying AI at enterprise scale when there's sensitive data involved in the stuff that some of the AI may want to have access to? And then how do you enable it to do all this sort of privacy enhancing and privacy preserving technology? Can that jump in and use the same type of technology that humans can as well?
Yeah, really great question then, where I think the world will be heading. So when you come to talk about AI and classical AI, let's just say consuming LLM models, or doing inference or training, that's kind of the holy grail here. And you want to do it in a way that you protect your data from, let's say, the LLM provider. That's a use case we see day and night. How can I consume Gemini or any other model without exposing my data?
Yeah.
Here, there's two things to take into account. One, some of these technologies are limited by the scale of the computation. So like things like homomorphic encryption, today with the current technology and hardware, it's not feasible. So there's research directions, by the way, with a lot of progress, but that's not feasible yet today to encrypt the data, and while it's encrypted, run an LLM on top of it. So
Got it.
That's a nice research avenue, and having to talk that in a research context. But for the commercial users, there's other technologies that can provide it. Again, it's still something that requires an integration with a third party. So what most of our customers do today, they use their homegrown LLM models or third-party LLM models in the cloud, but at the same time protecting the data. So using cloud services, cloud GPUs, and so on, but encrypting the data in-house, sending it their users using, in this case, confidential computing to run their homegrown LLMs or third-party LLMs without ever exposing the data. And that's probably the most common use case in the AI world.
Do you see a lot of companies using their own sort of in-house developed LLMs as opposed to using the commercially available ones?
It really depends on industries and the types of companies. So yes, in finance, you see it a lot. In very kind of fine-tuned industries, we see it. And in many other cases, just using these strong models is another alternative. The stronger the models get, the value of the fine-tuned models are decreasing. So if we really look forward, I think one would want to use the more standard models, but currently still a lot of homegrown models for specific problems. The other thing is that our customers are using homegrown models because it's more cost effective. If it's a model you built within your environment, it's much, much cheaper than using some of the general open models.
So one more thing, and then I'll let you go. But is there a next level? What's the right way to say this? Is there a next level of data preservation if I'm using an internally developed LLM model, or frankly, any kind of artificial intelligence model that's developed internally, so that my data, no matter how it's encrypted, no matter what, never leaves prem, as opposed to using a commercially available LLM where even if it's in that vault and it's using, what did you call it, homomorphic encryption, at some level, it still opens up some kind of risk, right? That maybe somebody can figure out how to get access to that data. Do you see more and more of this happening from a security to protect against security standpoints? Yeah.
Yeah. I will say the fully homomorphic angle you mentioned is really probably the holy grail of data security.
Got it.
It's both encryption. It's a post-quantum scheme. And if the world could do, and we'll get there at some stage, all these LLM computations on homomorphic encryption, that's probably where the world will be heading. Currently, it's not feasible, but we do see more and more this challenge, especially in this world of agents, that instead of trying to control within your perimeter, within your thing, what it's doing, if you can confidently really utilize the public cloud and work with third parties, it opens up a lot of opportunities, and we definitely see in the world heading there. I have to say it's still the more advanced companies. Most companies still think of data residency and keeping the data close to themselves, but many see that these technologies basically extend your level of control into the public cloud or into even third-party environments. So it's a very open kind of, if you look forward, I think that the summary here is that we would like to see a world where you're not sharing data, but you're working on shared insights, and you basically can be collaborating both with infrastructure players and data players with controls that are based on mathematics and encryption levels, like we do today in other areas, doing this in the world of AI and analytics.
Awesome. Okay, Alon, I'm going to let you go. I cannot thank you enough for all of the prep work that you've done for this, but also for participating in today's show. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for doing this today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, and thank you to all your audience.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let's bring in our next guest, Darren Wang, the CEO of OwlTing Group. Darren, how are you? Darren, can you hear me okay? Darren, can you hear me now? Okay, awesome. Look, thank you so much for joining the show today. It's great to have you here. Where are you based?
I'm Taipei.
Oh, in Taipei. Okay, super duper. Like I said, thank you so much for joining the show today. Darren Wang, CEO of OwlTing Group. We wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about stablecoins and how stablecoin-based payment infrastructure will help enterprises move money faster, aggregate payment volume more efficiently, and settle across borders with greater control. But before we get to that in detail, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the OwlTing Group, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
So the company, we started to invest in the stablecoin infrastructure from licensing about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So initially, we started from applying for the US license, then going to Japan, Europe, and other Asia countries. So from the first stage, the company, we want to build a fully regulated platform that's supporting the global money movement using stablecoin.
Got it.
So that's actually the mission starting 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So how is payment infrastructure rethinking the necessity of cross-border payments in Asia?
Yeah. So let me give you an idea. So right now, if I'm going to send the money from, let's say Taiwan to US, right?
Yep.
It takes about, I think, 36 to 48 hours for the money to be arrived, and
Right.
the cost for both of the banking part will probably charge about $30 to $40, for both sides. So I think right now people sending message globally for free, right? WhatsApp, Messenger, Telegram.
Yeah,
But
easy.
money movement could be as easy like sending a message. So that's the concept and ideal that we want to build the infrastructure from the very beginning.
Got it.
And going forward, we want to support messaging app, like WhatsApp, Telegram, that can use in our infrastructure to move the money globally, much faster and cheaper.
So can you address two things for me? One, why does it take 36 to 48 hours to move this money? Why doesn't it work on the weekends? And then I want you to remember, because I may forget, how the flow is going to work if we can use, like, I'd love to be able to use WhatsApp to just like send money to my business partner. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just say, send money to Martin, send him $1,000. Don't ask me why. Like, just do that. So can you address the first thing? One, why does it take so much time to send money? Even whether it's from Taiwan to Japan or from Taiwan to the US, like the distance shouldn't matter at all. But why does it take so much time? And then how do we get to the point where the apps start working?
Yeah, so I think the initial reason is the money movement was based on the banking infrastructure, right? So they say you want to send the money over the weekend, you cannot do that because the bank is closed, right? So after that, some platform like PayPal and Wise, they cannot, but still they are still moving the money with the fiat. So, but after Bitcoin was invented, and then the blockchain, everything going to a fully decentralized ledger. That's actually the initial concept when Bitcoin was invented. Yeah. So, but it wasn't ready for the regulated financial system. For example, you cannot plug in the crypto system into a banking system, right?
Right.
It's too far away. So our idea is to find a middle ground that can combine in the stable coin, because it's always one-to-one, and so the currency is stable. And then using the blockchain, so it's like a trading like Bitcoin 24/7. Is you can send the Bitcoin anytime, anywhere, and never close, right? So that's actually the beauty for blockchain is it's a public ledger. So you can, put all the transaction record over the pocket record. And then the last step is how do you connect the stablecoin ecosystem to the current like banking system?
Right.
So there's actually, several things you need to do in order to build a new financial system.
So I'm glad you segued there, because that was going to be my next question. At the end of the day, if I'm in New York and you're in Taipei, and I want to send Darren dollars, I don't want you to end up just with a stable coin, which is fine, but you can't go into like Pizza Hut or wherever. You can't go like to a dumpling shop on the corner street in Taipei and pay with stable coin, at least not yet. Unless I'm wrong, and tell me if I'm wrong. But the point is, at some point you need Taiwan dollars, yeah? But that last mile,
exactly.
isn't that last mile still governed by the banking system as well? So even if stablecoin to stablecoin happens instantaneously, and it happens on Saturday and Sunday, it happens at 2:00 in the morning or 2:00 in the afternoon, at the end of the day, you want to end up with Taiwanese dollars. How does the connectivity between the stablecoin and the local banking system in Taiwan and in the US in this scenario still not take like 36 to 48 hours?
Yeah, you're asking a very good question. So
you.
that's actually the last mile we just finished, this first quarter this year.
Yep.
So right now you can actually pull the money from your US banking account, for example, and then the money will be, travel with USDC.
Yep.
And then in this case, we are able to settle the money to your debit card or your bank account, actually. So you can actually using your debit card to, shopping anywhere anywhere that can take, credit card, debit card. So the reason we can do that is we figure everything out. So for the current financial system, you need Mastercard, Visa card, right? So you can shopping with the card. Yeah. So we have finished the integration with Visa Direct. So you can actually send the money from your bank account to transfer. The first day is transfer to the stablecoin USDC, and then the USDC will be traveled either through the Visa Direct network or Circle Payment network. So there's two cases we can send the money to Taiwan, and because you want to shopping with your card, right? So in this case, you'll be using the money will be settled from USDC to your debit card locally. So you can actually do that, and then the money will be arriving in a couple of minutes. So that's actually the first phase of the the picture that we had a couple of years ago by bridging the current financial system and then credit card or debit card.
So what actually ends up on the Visa or the MasterCard debit card? Is that a stable coin or is it local currency?
You can choose both, actually. Yeah.
But again, so if I have the stable coin, if the USDC is still on my card and I'm in Taiwan and I want to buy something, what is the transaction mechanism for enabling that so that then it changes into Taiwan dollars? Because I can't pay a street vendor, I'm presuming, with a USDC, yeah?
Yeah, so when the money arrives with Visa Direct, you can actually settle with a new NTD. Yeah, so you can... So
NTD, just for people that don't know, new Taiwan dollar, yeah?
New Taiwan dollar, yeah. Yeah, so you can actually, it becomes a balance on your debit card. So in this case, you can actually just using the debit card to shopping.
Okay. Where did I want to go? Okay, so let me ask you this then. Do we end up in a situation, do you think, where we only are exchanging stable coins globally, where there is no sort of transfer into fiat? Because if the stable coin itself is backed one-to-one, and that's why it's a stable coin, right? Because there's no leverage involved in it. I don't have $1,000 that supports $1 million of stable coins. Why do I even need to at some level, or will I stop needing to transfer that back into sort of traditional fiat if the stable coin itself is backed by the same Delta One amount of dollars or NTDs? Do you know what I mean? Like, do we just get to the point where every currency ends up being a stable coin?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question. So the reason why stablecoin was invented is because some countries, right, they don't have the stable currency locally.
For sure. Yeah.
For example, Latin American, some, developed countries, right? So people actually want to preserve their money, for, good value. That's the first reason why stablecoin was invented.
Yep.
And then, it comes out how do you use stablecoin? So the best application for stablecoin is actually cross-border payment, because right now cross-border payment is too expensive, too slow, right? And then the third question become once you have a stablecoin, how do you use it locally, right? So there's a bigger picture in the future that in the future I think every country will have their own stablecoin backed up by their local currency. And then the US dollar stablecoin will be serving as the digital dollar that can switch between their local currency and then US dollar for international transfer, right? So so I think that's the bigger picture for the future. So I think it doesn't really matter that if you receive the US dollar or new Taiwan dollar or Japanese yen, it's going to be the same amount of money that in your mobile phone or agent wallet, right?
Yeah, which is exactly what I was thinking. Look, I asked this to everybody because I can't get my head around the fact that an emerging economy country has an unstable currency.
Yes.
And a currency that nobody else wants. I don't want to pick any country because it really doesn't matter to me. But do you think that the digitalization of currency, when you look forward, right? Obviously, the US dollar is strong, the euro is strong. Strong meaning like it's embedded into a whole bunch of sort of financial transactions that we do globally. The yen is the same way, and the Chinese yuan is the same way. Do you think over time we end up in and I understand sovereignty and I understand the reasons why individual countries would want to have their own currency. I get it. But if small merchants in emerging economy A, and then the people in those countries are maintaining their savings or their balances, their money balances in a stable coin, whether it's the yuan, the yen, the euro, or the dollar, what is the impact on the local economies and on their ability to manage their own currency over time as stablecoins become the way that cross-border payments get made? Because then the necessity to maintain those other currencies seems to go closer to zero than it does to one, if that makes sense. I'm curious what you think.
That's right. So I think the reason why every country have their local currency is they need to preserve their government.
I get
that's
it.
very important.
Yeah,
Right.
the sovereignty matters, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, but it's also about hedging the risk, right? For example, if Hong Kong, for example, a very good example in the financial crisis, Asia financial crisis,
I was
Hong
there.
Kong survived, right? And Taiwan also survived because we have really strict policy to control the foreign currencies going to the country. So that's why the economy was safe. But I remember Korea was really bad.
Thailand was really bad.
Thailand was awful. Yeah. So I think that's you need to think about the problem with this way is like local merchants don't accept the local currencies, right? Either they are digital or the physical money, right? So I think that's remain the policy and the mechanism behind the local currency and U.S. dollar become how do we switch it the FX control in the particular country as a national policy. That's another issue, right? But I think for normal people, or enterprise, right? For example, Taiwan was very good in semiconductor IC design, and all the trading globally was settled with US dollar, right? So they can, if they have the stable coin with their global enterprise treasury tools, they can actually save a lot of money by using stable coin. Yeah, so that's they can save the cost for sending the money and then FX, for example. So I believe there's different angle to view this problem.
What has to change on the infrastructure side, if anything, to enable enterprises that are not involved in sort of the usage of stablecoin, and even for SMEs or SMBs? And, again, you said cross-border payments. So one of the reasons why this unlocks like a whole bunch of business potentially for, again, let's say there's a Taiwanese company that wants to deal with a company in Brazil or in Chile or somewhere else where like neither one of their currencies are one of the major currencies in the world. Stablecoins have to be involved. What kind of infrastructure is necessary for them to deploy, if anything? Or is it just like installing a digital wallet and it's off to the races?
So for stablecoin, the first one is which blockchain you are using, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually how many blockchain you supported. And so basically there's 3 different standards, like EVM, like Ethereum, Solana, and then Stellar right now. And the next one will be the anti-money laundering and then KYC standard between the banking system and then the digital wallet. So that's also need to be fulfilled in different countries, policy to control, to ensure the money flow is safe, and then preventing money laundering. And then third one is how do you fit in the stablecoin to the local currency? How do you settle the money? It's also important. So that's basically 3 things we are building for the infrastructure side.
So how? I just want to make sure that I understood this properly, and then I want to ask you one more thing, and then I'll let you go if that's okay. You said Ether, Solana. You said it depends which blockchain you're using, right? Whether it's Ethereum, Solana, or Tether. Did I get those 3 right?
Stellar, not Tether. Stellar.
Stellar. Excuse me, Stellar. That's my bad. Sorry. Let me just write that down. Stellar, not Tether. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, like most enterprises and most SMEs and most individuals don't care. Like they just don't care which blockchain they're using. In the same way that like they don't care about SMTP or STMP, whatever their email protocol. Like they just don't care. They don't care about TCP/IP, the internet protocols. Is there a way, or are people building layers on top of Ethereum, Solana, and Stellar so that it doesn't matter. You don't have to know like which blockchain you're using to be able to use stablecoins. You just like can use a stablecoin, and what happens on the back end just happens, and you don't need to know about it.
That's right. So we actually don't let the users to aware of the problem, because
Yep.
I don't think is like relevant to normal people. Like
Don't care. Yeah.
like my parents.
Yeah.
So
like
I think
mine.
to them US dollar is US dollar.
Right,
So
right.
we try to be simple. If that is different blockchain, we'll help them to switch, and that's covering the transaction fees. So there's the idea how how do we build a stablecoin infrastructure globally.
Right. Okay. What else do people need to know about OwlTing that they don't already know and that we haven't covered?
Yeah, so I think that right now the company is shifting to agentic payment. For example,
talk
in
to
the
me.
future, yeah, so you'll be using your AI agent to search for the hotel booking B&B, for example, and then every B&B or hotel, they will be supporting agentic payment with your AI agent. So right now, this is something we are building on our stablecoin infrastructure, so people can just type in the command, search for hotel, confirm the booking, and then the payment will be automatically done with your AI agent, which means that you don't need to enter your credit card number. You just need to confirm the hotel you're staying, and everything will be done by AI agent automatically. So this is actually the bigger picture in the future we are building for the agentic commerce for the future.
So agentic commerce, I kind of understand, right? The sense of like, I want to buy something, I kind of know what it is, but I don't want to have to go search, 15 different websites to find out what the thing is. That I completely understand, but do we need agentic payments to actually facilitate this? The agentic e-commerce I completely get, but is agentic, payment better than the way the payment system works now? Where just like I have my credit card sitting out in all these places, why would I need the agentic payment? Like from your perspective, I know you're building it, so that's kind of cool, but like, why would we need agentic payments to come in there, as opposed to just like I buy it from a website and I just use my existing credit card that's already on file with them?
Yeah, so the current checkout system was built for human being. It's not built for robot, right?
I got
AI
it.
agent.
Yep, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So that's the first reason. And the second reason is the cost. So right now the traditional payment gateway costs you about 4 to 5% in some countries.
Got it.
So using agentic payment actually will only cost you about 10% compared to the current cost. So to the merchant side, they can actually earn more money by taking the AI agent wallet to complete the checkout. So because you don't have the intermediary bank, issuing bank, something like that. So you save a lot of cost by paying by agent directly.
Got it. Okay. Well, that makes a little bit more sense to me, because I've asked a lot of people that question and no one actually has mentioned the cost side of it. I do understand though the fact that the e-commerce sites and the e-commerce stuff was not built was built for humans, was not built for agents.
Yes.
And for robots. But once you have agentic commerce, then I guess you're going to need agentic payments to kind of make that communication more seamless. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah. So that's for the cost and then the time for settle the money. So right now, if you are running a small business coffee shop, people using credit card to pay the coffee.
Yep.
You need to wait for about 2 days to receive the money from the bank. Right? But using agentic payment, you will receive the money in a couple of seconds. So that's the beauty for agentic payment and using the stablecoin infra.
Perfect. Okay. Darren, thank you so much for doing this today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of what must be an extremely busy schedule to do this. I learned a lot. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as we did. Thank you so much again for coming today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye for now. Okay, let's bring Nanda in, the CMO and co-founder at MWX AI. And how are you? How are you doing today? Awesome. You can hear me okay? How do I properly pronounce your last name? Easy. You mean exactly the way it's spelled?
Exactly the way it's spelled, yes.
Sorry. I don't like guessing at names because if it's wrong, I feel bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the Indonesians do have a field day with my name. Ivens, Iven, all sorts. But
Where are you from?
Originally Indonesia. My father's British, my mom's Indonesian, and I grew up mainly abroad. I'm a little bit of a diaspora, as the
I know the feeling.
people. Yeah.
I know the feeling.
As you are as well, coming from, obviously, I'm guessing Connecticut.
Born in California, lived in Connecticut a little bit, but most of my life, actually the predominance of my life has been in Asia. It's not even close. And the longest I've ever lived in any particular place has been in Tokyo. So
okay.
You want to talk about diaspora? Like, I don't even know what I am. Let's change the subject. Look, it's great. It's great to have you here. We wanted to talk to you about how an accessible AI marketplace, and this sounds really interesting to me, can help SMEs automate work, expand capacity, and kind of level the playing field so they can compete with larger businesses. But before we get to that in detail, why don't you tell us a little bit about MWX AI?
Well, we started to sort of, look at the market overall in terms of AI availability, and it's always, there's that kind of feeling that AI is only available for big companies, big corporation, and it's always complex when it comes to small medium enterprise having to implement AI, and there's kind of that psychological barrier. So we went out there to kind of go, okay, well, we're going to build solutions that are product market fit and will solve problems for SMEs on vertical levels. For example, content creation, and if you go and use AI, you'd have to go, create the prompt on ChatGPT or Claude, connect with Higgsfield, blah blah blah. All these kind of all the different tools that is needed to create just one content, right? I mean, nowadays there's MCPs, but just a few months ago you're looking at setting up a system with Clawbot, right? OpenClaw. So we kind of came up with a solution which is essentially promptless, right? So you're just basically putting on the different things that you need, your basic image, and then it spits out the creatives, the video, or the animation that is necessary for, and the copy as well, for your business, right? And it's also, we're doing it for finance, we're doing it for legal, we're doing it for CRM, we're doing it for research, and many other solutions. So we're looking at each SME's pain points, challenges on a day-to-day basis, and we're trying to provide them a solution which is one, ready to use, easy to use, right? And none of this sort of counterintuitive. You have to create this massive prompt and pay an exorbitant amount of money to kind of get the output that you need, but at a very, very affordable pricing, because
So this brings up some interesting questions, if you don't mind. Just a couple of things. Yeah. The first thing is, what makes the AI not accessible to SMEs, or make it feel like it's only available to large enterprises? Is it cost? Is it just knowledge? Is it literacy? Like, what is it that makes it not accessible to SMEs? Can you still hear me? I can't hear you.
Sorry,
It's okay.
Can you hear me now?
You're very soft now.
No.
There you are. Better.
I'm back. All right, good.
Okay.
Apologies.
Not at all.
So could you repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, sorry. So at the beginning of your conversation, you said, like, you want to make AI availability. You want to make it accessible to SMEs. What makes it currently, like without MWX, what makes it not accessible to SMEs, or even just makes it feel like it's only accessible to larger companies and larger enterprises?
Well, I think there's a level of technical knowledge that businesses do need to have to implement AI in the most effective and create those efficiencies for their business, right?
Yep.
Some coding tricks and things like that, and actually you have to know exactly what you want out of
for sure.
When you're entering. I mean, I had a look. I've tried so many different AIs, and one of the ones that really frustrated me was Gemma, right? And it took me like 5 hours to figure out how it worked. And then when I did, they only spat out 8 slides, and I almost threw my iPad.
Your family had to duck, like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly.
What is he doing over there?
Yeah, I was really frustrated. But I mean, just even a simple platform like that was there was a lot of knowledge that I needed to kind of get up to speed with.
Got it.
And I think the accessibility factor is the fact that simplicity in usage versus and the current play of all the GPTs, there's even if they try to simplify it, it's still very, very difficult.
It's taken me a while to get used to, like, you're right, the right way to prompt stuff. I think I'm getting better at it after using it for a year or so. But I still have to think a lot about what that prompt should look like. Is there a cost aspect to this as well, where there's some way that MWX can actually make it less expensive? And how do you know what I mean? Like, how do you figure out how, because all these actions cost tokens if you're using some of the big frontier labs. How do you disintermediate the cost that you would have to pay, or that an SME would have to pay, so it's not as expensive as it might be otherwise?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things that eats up token is actually you creating long prompts, right?
Yep.
That eats up your token, and the very fact that we put these parameters that ask like very simple questions and like drop down menus, right? That provides a much cheaper token usage versus the normal, right? I mean, how many times have you gone into Claude or ChatGPT and then you're already paying $20-something, but you hit a limit, right? And when you hit a limit, you're about to get that PowerPoint presentation or analysis of some sort, and then all of a sudden it hits a limit, and then, you're like, oh my God, I have to wait for another 5 hours until. Right. Yeah, that frustration we try to take out as well, Michael.
But what does that mean? So does that mean you're not using some of these big frontier lab models, or you're creating your own model that's less expensive to use, or you're using local models? How do you stop that from happening to SMEs?
It's a combination of both, because at the end of the day, the whole sort of I guess the decentralized model is because the more SMEs that's using it, the more the system learns, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
At the moment, we're also subsidizing that with the current LMs. For example, for creatives, we're still kind of connecting different LMs from Byte Plus to Geo, et cetera, right? So it is a combination of the two. So that's why we can manage the costs and create that affordability for the SMEs.
Where do most of these SMEs actually feel the first value out of this? You know what I mean? Like, when they look at this and think like, okay, I need to be using AI to accomplish something. Is it content creation? Is it marketing? Do you know what I mean? Is it customers? Where are they looking and just thinking, oh, I have to apply it here first? And is it statistically relevant that it's common across the spectrum?
I think probably, I'd say, close to about 50% of SMEs that's using our platform is using it on the creative front.
On the creative front, interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
On the creative front. And second would be we have a system which is essentially you're creating a shop using WhatsApp. So it's a chat bot, and then you've got a WhatsApp shop, in there as well. And then that connects to the finance as well. So I think most are going towards the creatives. I think that's probably the highest friction that a lot of SMEs have is how do you stay visible within social media, and but still running your business at the same time, and it is difficult for a lot of them.
Can you talk to me more about the marketplace aspect of this? Is it the case that MWX is building all of this technology themselves, or is the marketplace open in the same sense that like WordPress does this? Anybody can create a plugin, put it up on the WordPress place, and then people have to pay for it. I'm presuming at some level WordPress takes a cut of all the plugins that are there. I don't know that for a fact. But is this part of the strategy for MWX as well, where you're like, we can't build everything at all the time because there's just not enough time in every day to do it, even if we're using Claude Code to code this stuff? Is it an open marketplace where, like, if I have an idea, I can put it on the MWX marketplace and then SMEs can use it, not just in Indonesia, but all over the place? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is the plan. That is the plan moving forward, because we want to be able to kind of empower a lot of the sort of like solopreneurs as well that have solutions, and provide a way to kind of join into the marketplace and sell their solution through us. However, at this point in time, we've developed our own 20 of our own solutions for now.
Got it.
And we'll be inviting people and curating other solutions from independent developers. Shortly, very soon.
It's hard to put a time frame on it. It's a very good idea, though, and I know it's a good idea because I had it. I'm just kidding. I'm making fun of myself. Do you see situations where sort of inexperienced SMEs or SMBs start using the MWX platform? Maybe they hire like a younger person who manages all this stuff for them, but then they figure out like, oh, this AI stuff is actually really powerful, and they want more, even more powerful tools to be able to use, and maybe more sort of granular control over it, and that they branch out themselves, even on the platform or on the marketplace, and start using like more important tools as the stuff that they're using becomes part of their core operational infrastructure. Yeah.
I mean, we see that all the time, because we've created an academy as well, right? So we're teaching. It's called MWX Academy. You can go onto the site. I mean, unfortunately, it's still, most of it is still in Bahasa.
That's okay.
But we see that there's that psychological barrier that they want to try it out, and then once they're like, wait, actually this is pretty cool, they try different solutions, and then they've essentially they've graduated themselves, and then they're off doing their own thing. We see that, and we're in the market to actually get them to a level playing field with the big boys, right?
Yeah.
That's been our sort of mantra, to trying to help the SMEs around the world.
So it almost sounds to me, we spent a lot of time, God, I want to say back in 2021 and 2022, talking about financial literacy and financial inclusion. And I feel like we can just take the word financial out and start talking about AI literacy and AI inclusion. Is this the terminology that you're using, and how important is that to MWX? But more importantly, how important is it to the clients and the cohorts that you're trying to serve?
I think it's really important, because I mean, a lot of businesses, a lot of small businesses are still looking at AI as a tool versus like sort of an operating system, or as part of AI as your team member, right? So AI literacy. I mean, back in the early 2000s, we were talking about digital literacy.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember that. And then digital transformation, blah blah blah. And now it is the age of AI, and it is about trying to get people to be literate in using AI. And I mean that's been our vision from the get-go. How do we help SMEs, right? Making sure that they can compete with the big boys. right?
And what's the feedback loop that you get from your clients? So you said you've built 20 of these tools that make stuff easier for the SMEs and SMBs to use it. Maybe it's low code stuff or no code stuff that they're using. But what's the feedback that you get from them about the usefulness of the things that you've built? And also, hey, that was great, but can you build this other thing as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do get a lot of feedback, and I think what our feedback loop has kind of turned into the evolution of each of the solutions, obviously, and try to get better and try to improve it as we go along. And it so happens that our other product, not MWX Market, but MWX Alpha, that's came out of the very fact that we've positioned our AI with our token, and then they say, hey, you guys need to do something which is more related to the Web3 space, and that's why we built the Alpha.
Got it. So Alpha is Web3 stuff. What does that mean? Like,
so it's basically like a Bloomberg terminal, but it's for these crypto degen traders, trenchers. So they get these alpha information about certain types of tokens and things like that. And they a lot of crypto traders basically trade on signals, right? We provide them with the alpha, because I mean that's been our legacy as well. Our company, which is run and owned by my partner, has been in the social intelligence space for the last 15 years. It so happens that Media Wave is the first social media intelligence company in Indonesia, and because of that legacy, we built the AI, and we built Alpha as well.
Super. Okay. I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate your time today, Nanda, Ivens. It was great to have you here. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as we did. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Okay, that's it today for ATP Insights. Thank you to everybody again. We've had a lot of people with us today during our real-time broadcast on YouTube and on X. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. As always, give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. Let us know in the comments on all the platforms if there's anything you would like us to discuss on our upcoming shows. We do look actually on the platform to see if you've left any comments or left any questions. As a team, we try to respond to as many of them as we possibly can. And to be fair, if there are things you want us to discuss on future episodes, or there are people that you want us to have on as guests, please do let us know. We'd like to make this as interactive as possible. My name is Michael Waitz.